More than 300 Sewage and Water Board employees were at their posts when Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans on August 29, 2005. And they stayed through the catastrophic flooding that engulfed 80% of New Orleans after the levees broke. These dedicated and heroic employees were first responders providing critical emergency sewage and water board system restorations, while in many instances fighting for their own survival and the survival of others. Their valiant efforts must not be forgotten but preserved for posterity as a testament to the courage, tenacity, and dedication of these employees in the face of overwhelming odds.
I'm Ricky Alexander. I'm with the Sewage Operations Department. I'm a supervisor.
Mm-hmm. And where were you on August 29th, 2005?
I was in Drainage Pumping Station number 13 in Algiers. It's the only drainage pumping station for Algiers on the, I guess you'd say, the west side of the Intercoastal Canal. Mm-hmm. And that's where I was stationed just about every storm for 26 years at the time.
Mm-hmm. And what happened while you were there on August 29th?
Well, it was sort of like any other time where we went in and we didn't expect anything to happen. A lot of guys were joking around, oh, some more overtime, and everybody was, you know, hey, this is nice. We didn't expect anything to happen, as it never really did. We never had anything major prior to this. Mm-hmm. We were at the station, and when the weather forecast started turning around saying it's heading directly for us, we started to get serious about it. We said we need to go and pick up everything that might fly around and become missiles, and so we went all through the yard, picked up everything, put bars on our roll-up doors and things like that, made sure everything was nice and tight as we should, and then we just waited.
Were you getting anxious at all?
We were, because everyone on TV was saying, this is the big one. This is the one we've always feared. This is the 100-year storm. You know, if you're not out, it may be too late. You need to get to a safe place, to a second floor, things like that. And so I just started making phone calls to make sure all of my friends and family were getting out of town.
Mm-hmm. And where were you and what were you doing when you heard the levees had breached?
The day after the storm, it was very calm. We saw a lot of wind damage and things like that, but there wasn't anything like flooding or anything like that in Algiers and where I was. And we started hearing reports of levee breaches and things like that. And we started hearing calls over the Sewage and Water Board radio of station operators reporting that the water's rushing in. It's already up to the office. We're getting ready to leave the office. It's rising, things like that. And people were saying, well, you know, take cover, get up to the rafters if you have to, tie yourself to the rafter. And we started really realizing this is bad.
What was going through your mind when you heard all this chaos on the radio?
I couldn't believe it. I was in shock, because how could it be so bad there and it's not here? But we were on the other side of the Mississippi River, and the winds and the levee breaches didn't happen on the West Bank. The storm had kind of turned and went toward the other side of the Mississippi River and did all the damage there. So we were just in shock. You know?
So describe what happened after that, after you realized the chaos and you were listening to all the frantic communication on the radio.
Well, we started wondering, what can we do? What can we do? And some people were yelling for, we need help, we need to get out of here. One of them was Ronaldo Robertson. I'll never forget his voice on the radio calling for help, we need to get out of here. And I got on the radio and asked my superintendent, should I take my boat and go get him? And he said, no, Ricky, we have this, you know, take care of the West Bank. And I said, yes, sir. So the following morning, Ronaldo gets on the radio again, and I hear this voice a lot, and he said, you know, we need help. You know, where is the rescue? Because they were being told there's helicopters coming to get you, there's boats coming to get you, and no one was arriving to rescue our people, so, or our operators and all. So I got on the radio right away and I said, Ronaldo, do you need me to come and rescue you? This is Ricky. And he said, Ricky, yes, more than you know, Ricky. And I said, I'm on my way. So we got the boat, hooked it up to the truck, and headed across the bridge. And launched on Earhart, started going down Martin Luther King Drive. I'll never forget, there was hundreds and hundreds of people stranded on the interstate. And when I turned on Martin Luther King, there was people going back and forth from a little convenience store right there, carrying cases of water and things on their head because the water was up to their neck. And I had to wait for a break in the line and go through. Went to Station 1, and I saw a frail little old lady standing next to a car, and all I could tell her is get on top of the car, get on top of the car. And she just shook her head yes to me, and that bothers me to today. I don't know if she made it, and it does bother me that I didn't stop to pick her up. But I know I was going to pick up a big group of people at the drainage station. I had to get them out. So I went on, got to the station, picked them up. A lot of people yelling threats to me, I better stop and things like that. I just kept going, picked them up, came back, and brought them to the West Bank so they could get some rest because I knew they'd be needed in the future. But where they were in water, and we had to get them out. So that's one of the things that I went and got them.
So your thoughts at this time was trying to rescue your people and get some kind of control of the sewage and water board system. What was happening to it at that time?
Right, because I knew if we had no electricity, if the water was up to the top of the desk at some of these drainage stations, that means that all the motor pits were wet. That means that we couldn't run pumps, even if we had backup generators, which not many stations had it at the time. But I knew that we had to get these guys out until we could get this water drained from the city enough to dry out these motors so we could run the pumps. And leaving them in harm's way and leaving them in the station to fend for themselves, because they were saying people were threatening to come into stations and things like that. So I had to get them away, give them a break. Maybe they could get a shower, maybe get some dry clothes, get something to eat, something to drink, because they had been there a couple of days already. And so I took as many as I could back to the West Bank so they could, do that.
So you were in rescue mode at that time?
Right.
How long did it take you to accomplish your rescue mission?
Well, that rescue mission took a couple hours. I kind of remember I did see a dead body. Someone had wrapped up in a sheet and tied to a pole floating in the water, things like that. But that took a few hours. Got them back. And then when I got back, as soon as I got back, I started getting more calls over the radio. Ricky, can you come get us? We need help. I said, yes. So went back across. They had roadblocks at this time, police across the bridge stopping everyone. They had a line of boats sitting there. And I went up to the front of the line, and state policemen from another state told me they're not letting any other boats through. And I said, well, I'm with the Sewage and Water Board. He said, I'm sorry. They said, no one gets through. So I got on my water board radio and I called the emergency operations, and I told them what the problem was. I said, I'm trying to go rescue our operators, and they're telling me I cannot get through with my boat. And Deputy Chief at the time, Riley, of the police department, got on the radio and he said, Ricky, can the policeman hear me? I said, yes, he can. He said, this is for you and any other policeman or anyone else out there listening. The Sewage and Water Board has full access to the city, because without the Sewage and Water Board, we don't have a city. And it was a good feeling that someone talked up for us, like, yes, we are important. And so they let me through right away, and I went through and went to a couple other drainage stations and rescued some people there and brought them back to the West Bank again. My boat, it was my boat, and my boat was a fiberglass boat, and it was rubbing the bottom of the street at times. The keel of my boat had rubbed so many times that it was down to a very small keel, which meant I had no more steering. So I had to stop my rescue missions after that.
So how many rescue missions did you go on?
By boat, I went on two rescue missions to rescue our guys. But when we picked up my boat the second time, it was by the Municipal Auditorium at the Orleans Avenue exit. When we picked up my boat, they had, by this time, this was like the third day, thousands of people stranded on the interstate. And there was no wind. It was at least 98 degrees. People were there dying, literally dying. They had no food, they had no water, they had no shelter. And they were on concrete, which made it even worse. And I remember, I need to rescue as many of these people as I can and get them to some kind of shelter. So I yelled out. I said, everyone listen up. And everyone looked at me, as many people as could hear me. I said, I'm taking you to shelter. I said, I want all you kids and teenagers to fill my boat. And I want you adults to get into my truck. And I said, so then I went and told my boss. I told him what I was doing. I said, we're going to bring them to the convention center where they at least have a chance of living. They don't have a chance here. And my boss said, okay. And I told Ronaldo, he was driving another truck, and I said, we're going to fill your truck too. He said, no problem. So we filled up all 3 trucks and the boat with as many people as we could possibly carry. And I remember there was one guy pushed his wife up in a wheelchair, and he said, I was kind of packed, and he said, mister, he said, please take my wife. I'll be okay. And I said, no, sir, you're not going to leave your wife. So I had a 5-gallon bucket. We turned it upside down. We put it down, and then I had another 5-gallon bucket. We turned it over, and I told him, we're going to lift your wife up. We're going to set her on this bucket. And I said, can you do this, ma'am? She said, yes. So we picked her up. We sat her on the bucket, and then we folded up her wheelchair and put it up against the truck. Got him in also. And then at that time, I felt like God was testing me. A man walked up that was blind with another man. He said, can you take him? I said, yes, I can. So I took his hand. I said, sir, we're going to bring you to safety. He said, okay. I said, and I took his hand. I showed him the 5-gallon buckets. Can you sit here? He said, yes. I picked him up, or helped him up. He got on the bucket. We closed up, filled up. We had all 3 trucks full and the boat full. And we started going, and we went to the exit at Chapatula Street, because we were on the bridge that normally heads from the West Bank to the East Bank. That's the bridge that everyone was using. And we got to the exit, and everyone got off, and one lady came to me and tried to give me money. I said, ma'am, I don't need your money. I said, I didn't do this for money. And I said, God will take care of me. She said, oh, he will. Oh, he will. And it was just such a good feeling to be helping. I did it because I wanted to, not because I was trying to make money or anything.
So you went from rescuing your own people to rescuing the citizens who were stranded.
Right, because they were going to die if no one came to get them, and it seemed like no one was coming to get them. And I said, well, I'm going to take as many as I can, because I heard that there was a ship taking people from the convention center, like a cruise ship. And when we got back to the station, on TV, they were showing some pictures and everything, and they showed a ship that was taking people on, and I saw the man pushing the wheelchair with a lady, and I couldn't believe it. I said, oh my God, that's the man and the lady I was telling you about. It was such a good feeling, but I was just doing what I could.
How did this impact you?
I felt fine, but I was doing whatever I could to make things happen. It wasn't a big deal. We were working about 20 hours a day, doing whatever we could to help, and 4 hours a day, or 4 hours at nighttime, we'd get a little rest and go back at it another 20 hours. It was, I seemed to be fine at the time. I can remember we were running out of diesel fuel, and that was another thing. I said, every day I'd try to do something to make a difference. And because if we didn't do it, no one was there to do it. We were the ones that had to dry the city out and do whatever we could. So, some of the stations that the operators stayed, and they were starting to be able to pump with their diesel-driven pumps. They were running out of diesel fuel, and I heard this over the radio. And one of the guys I had rescued, his name's Mike Smith, and he rode shotgun with me, so I called him Shotgun. We didn't know each other prior to the storm, but we became best of friends. And Mike and I, every morning, I'd say, let's go at it. He said, what you got for me, babe? And I'd say, well, Shotgun, I said, today we're going to find diesel fuel. I said, because I understand they're running out of diesel fuel, and the diesel trucks, I heard, were refusing to come into the city because there was lawlessness and shooting and things like that, and they were afraid someone was going to try to hijack their truck. So they refused to bring in diesel. We were running out, and if we didn't keep pumping, the city wasn't going to dry out. So I told Mike, let's go find diesel. So I knew where the fire department was stationed. They were behind Holy Cross College. And I said, they have all these diesel fire trucks. They have to know where diesel is. So I went in, talked to a chief, and he said, there's a ship in the river at the end of Barataria Boulevard, and they have all the diesel we want. They're giving it to us for free. I said, really? He said, yes. I said, okay. So he told me where the ship was. I went on the ship. I spoke to the captain, and the captain told me you could have as much diesel fuel as you want. This ship holds over 1 million gallons, and he said, I have another 2 ships that can come. All I have to do is ask. You can have as much as you want. And I said, this is great. I said, but how do I get it to the station? He said, if you look over the levee right there, there's some diesel trucks, Retief Oil Company. He said, they're letting us use their trucks. He said, all you have to do is get permission. You can take your own fuel. So I got permission from Retief Oil, and I drove one of the tandem trucks, which I had never driven a truck that big before, but it was something that I had to get over. I had a saying, I don't take no for an answer, and any roadblock comes up, I'm going to go around it. We have to make this work. And I told all my guys that this is what we're going to do. We're going to do whatever it takes. So I started driving diesel trucks, delivering fuel to the different drainage stations. And that was about, by that time, I want to say it was about 8 days after the storm when we started delivering diesel fuel. I tried to drive an 18-wheeler, but that was not, without training, you can't. It looked like a cockpit of an airplane. I said, oh my Lord. I said, but I tried anyway. I put in what I thought was first, and room. No, this isn't going to work. So Retief Oil provided a driver for us, and they started delivering fuel in 18-wheelers. We got police escort if we thought we needed it. The police was working hand in hand with us, and we traded things.
And all this is because you guys were improvising as you went along.
Right, we had to do what we had to do. So the police were trading with us. They needed ice. We needed gasoline one time, and they knew where we could get gas, and we knew where they could get ice, and we were trading, we were bartering, things like that. And whenever I needed a police escort, I'd call, and I'd say, hey, we need a police escort. We have a diesel truck that's going at nighttime to such and such station, and they would help us, So we backed each other up. They were staying in a house because all of the police stations were flooded, and they had no communication, but I knew where they were. So I'd go zoom over there, hey, I need help. No problem, and they'd help us. But after about the 8th or 9th, I think it was the 8th day, Miss St. Martin, the executive director, came to me and said, hey, we'd like you to go and spend some time with your family. And I said, Miss St. Martin, you don't understand. If I stop, the diesel delivery stop. She said, no, I promise you I'll make sure they continue. I said, but why? And she said, well, I think you need a break. And I said, no, ma'am, I don't need a break. I'm fine. And she said, I think you need a break. I said, no, ma'am, I'm not taking a break. She said, you have to. And it's the executive director, so I said, yes, ma'am, I have to go. So they put me on a bus and said, where do you want to go? I'm with a bunch of other people. And my family was staying in Galveston, Texas. And I said, I want to go to Galveston. So they brought me as close as they could, and I had a friend pick me up and brought me to my family. Well, I'm talking a mile a minute to them, just telling them everything that was happening. And all of a sudden, I realized everyone around me had been sitting still for 9 days, and they were calm, and I had to slow down to their level. And it was kind of a crash and burn type of thing, and I just started crying. And I'm like, what is wrong with me? I didn't know why I was crying. I told my wife, I'm sorry. I don't even know why I'm crying. She said, what's the matter? I said, I don't know. And I just cried and cried. Well, she took me to a Red Cross shelter, and we were driving, and this lady almost walked into our car. We stopped, and we said, my wife said, my husband needs help. And she said, is he having a heart attack? And she said, no, he's just really upset. She said, well, I'm a clinical therapist, bring him in, I'll talk to him. So she was leaving for work, but she went back in and she spoke to me for at least an hour and a half and allowed me to stop crying. But, you know, so I felt a little better. Well, the next day I felt like I needed more. So I told my wife I'm going to go back, and she said, okay. So I went back and I met with a different therapist, and this therapist explained to me that what I was going through was the same thing a firefighter goes through when he can't save everyone in a house that's burning, or a policeman where people are shooting at someone and they can't save them all, and things like that. And once I realized why I was upset and why I was crying, because I had to pass up these old ladies, and they had one couple holding a newborn baby saying, please help us. And when those things, I realized that's why I was crying. I just couldn't help everyone, and I wanted to, but I couldn't. I didn't cry since then about it, and I'm okay. But I owe a lot of credit to the Red Cross therapist.
So the weight of the devastation finally caused you to collapse.
Right, and it was just, and I think if I could have kept going at full speed like I was here, working 20 hours, sleeping 4, and doing whatever I could every day, having a list of, we're going to do this today, we're going to make a difference, we're going to go do this, we're going to go do that, I felt like, I probably could have continued. But it was probably something that Miss St. Martin saw in me, that she knew I was about to crash, and because I couldn't keep at that speed, and she knew it, because I'd come in, I'd speak to her like a minute, I got to go, boom, and I'd be gone, and she'd write down everything I said. I'd fill her in as much as I could.
So given what you'd gone through, the mental collapse, what made you come back?
Well, after I realized why I was so upset and I was okay, all I wanted to do was come back. I was like, I got to go back. There's a lot that we have to do. The city's still flooded. Because no one was going to come in. There was no one, to my knowledge, coming to do it. We had to do it ourselves. So I wanted to go back. So Miss St. Martin told me to leave. Go give it 5 to 7 days, and I was back in 5 days. So I had to come back.
So how would you say your actions and those of the employees of the Sewage and Water Board help the system begin to recover?
Well, because we didn't have outside help, and we had to do everything ourselves or it wouldn't get done, a lot of people stepped forward and worked, to where they had never worked that dedicated in their life. And they knew they were doing this for a good reason, and it wasn't time to say, I need a break, or I need a longer lunch period, or I need a raise, or anything like that. It was, you did it because it needed to be done, and it was heartfelt work. People were working from their heart, and not from, oh, I'm getting paid hourly, so I need to work. It wasn't anything like that. We weren't concerned about money. We weren't concerned about anything but making or helping the city of New Orleans recover, because we all love the city. I've been here all my life, and all I wanted to do was help as much as I could. It wasn't about anything else.
So there's no doubt in your mind that the employees of the Sewage and Water Board gave the citizens of New Orleans the ability to return.
Absolutely. It was not. It wasn't possible if we wouldn't have done what we had done. The city would not have recovered. I believe it was one of the national news media said it would take like 90 days to dewater the city in their estimates, because they had to fill the breaches in the levees and pump everything out. Well, when you started seeing streets that you could drive on again, it was probably a week had went by since they started pumping with the diesel pumps and we kept them running with the diesel deliveries and things like that, because they were starting to turn off diesel pumps because they were running out of fuel. And you don't want to run out of fuel in a diesel, because then you have a lot of mechanical work that has to be done. So they were shutting them down until we started delivering diesel. So, there was a lot of untold stories of, that a lot of my friends have talked to me about, where they actually went and rescued people off of rooftops and brought them to UNO and places like that. There was a lot of people that perished because there was a delay in response time by other agencies, and we did the best we could to do the city proud and do the Sewage and Water Board proud. And I'm very proud of all the workers that helped me, and I helped them, and we worked as a team. And it hurts me when people point out there's 4 people standing around a hole and 1 person working. They don't know our hearts, and I want them to know that it's in our heart.
Last question. How would you describe the progress made post-Katrina in the rebuilding of the Sewage and Water Board?
The progress, it still hurts to drive around, let's say, the 9th Ward and see 1 house and then see 5 vacant lots and another house, and then you see a house that has no repair done to it since Katrina. That hurts me. But to see the festivals and everything that we have, and everyone's happy again, and there are a lot of houses that have been rebuilt, and a lot of neighborhoods did come back, and a lot of people are, in a strange way, a little better off than they were prior to Katrina. Their houses are a little nicer and things like that. But I think we did well, and some of the Sewage and Water Board stations, for instance, have been rebuilt, and it's better than it used to be, and we're safer now if we have to weather another storm, which, by the way, we're all willing to do. If there's another storm, we'll be there. There's going to be no one running.
So there's been a definite improvement as far as the system is concerned.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. A lot of improvements. Everything's been raised to, if it floods again, we can continue to pump and do what we're meant to do. De-water the city, keep all of the facilities running, and do our part.
Richard, it's been a joy talking to you.
Thank you very much.
The flooding of New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina was the most devastating disaster to hit any U.S. city. When most of the city was evacuating, some 300 Sewage and Water Board employees stayed on the job, facing great personal peril to respond to this devastating crisis. We salute our Katrina heroes who met the greatest challenge of their lives and found a way to rise above the storm and overcome the impact of Hurricane Katrina. The board's forces dewatered the city in 11 days after the breaches were closed and began to restore quality of life, services of water, sewer, and drainage to the city. It was the restoration of these services that made it possible for citizens to return. It was the restoration of these services that made it possible for progress to begin, going from devastation to recovery, restoration, and today, rebuilding of the most complex infrastructure in the country. Today, confidence in the Sewage and Water Board's management and fiscal responsibility has resulted in the first water and sewer rate increases since the 1990s. These increases will be the building blocks for the development and the continuous rebuilding of the board's systems in the future.